Welcome to the show. So this week I'm doing a bit of bog work, so I thought I'd cover what I use in that, how to keep the dust down, what sort of blocks I use. So I'm doing a bit in the engine bay so I can get the bonnet hinges on properly and start fitting some panels up. So that'll be good. I've got some stuff from Simon which I haven't seen yet, so I'm keen to see that like I normally am, and he's putting that direct to Josh, so that'll be cool. Links for the shirts in the comments below. Jump on there, really comfy, good stuff. Catch you at the end. Woohoo, 4,000! Righto, so I got this back out of the booth. I'm just having a look today. There's a few things that I want to sort out before I go too much further. This line here is a factory line. We've made a few improvements and filled up a few holes, and the problem I have is this line here looks totally different to this one. So this one's got a piece of 3mm welded on it, and we've made a full weld along the top edge there, but we haven't radiused that enough, and I just think there's too much variance between those two. So I'm probably going to shave a bit off that, and then the same along this top edge. This is a factory line here, and then this line here we've welded a bit of 1.2 to the original body, and that's all steel, and that's about the radius there that I like, but it gets too fine here and then it widens out again, and then over this side it's quite sharp along here. So I'm going to just go along and double check those radiuses and make those a bit nicer, and then I'm going to put a bit of filler in. I'm going to fill this panel and across the top, just so that I can really get my eye in on those and I can mount the bonnet hinges, and then I've got to get that top panel that goes over this and sit that on and just see what I need to do there with filler, just to make sure that I've got all that sitting how I want it to go. Then I can get my hinges on and start setting the bonnet up. So we'll get into that. So the prep for the epoxy before we put the filler on is just some burgundy Scotch-Brite. So my understanding is that's around the 240 grit. Even though it's a Scotch-Brite, it's like effectively a sandpaper. It's fairly easy. Just an all-over scuff up. Helps with the adhesion. So I've done all the way around there now, and I'm going to mix the first lot of bog up and we'll get into that and have a go. Righto, so I told you about the vacuum machine and how I use those new blocks nowadays. So what I've got in front of me now is I dragged out all the blocks that I normally go looking for when I've got a specific thing I want to do. And when I did that, I found the old faithful. So this one here would have done, you know, probably all the original rocks, the Pioneer Coupe and that sort of stuff. So that's just a hard block. So that's now replaced by that one. So this one's obviously got the vacuum fitting on it. This one made a nice big mess. And we used to use 40 grit or 36 grit to start with, and then go to an 80 grit. So that was the old school, don't use that anymore, but I still use some of these blocks. So these, fairly hard on the backing. This one I use a lot when I'm colour sanding, so if I'm doing roofs and those sorts of things, for that first chop with the 800. That's one of my dad's old blocks. I think that's a cool looking block. So very firm, really good if you want to cut something nice and hard and sharp. And then a whole range of Dura blocks. I bought a couple of sets of those. I've chopped a few of those up. So sometimes you just need to make a different shape than they don't have. So a radius there. I think I made that one to do the top of the XABC guards. So when you're doing across the top of those. The old 3M block. Just if you've got one of those, do yourself a favour and put a straight edge across it and just make sure it's still flat, because they tend to end up curving. And if I go to buy a new one, which I haven't done for a long time, but I'll always check it, because often they're not flat from new. And then there's a whole range of soft blocks. So these are good if you're doing an external radius and you want to get that shape, and they're all different. So I tend to use which one suits the best, how soft they are. You'll see these in a lot of panel shops. They're quite a versatile block. And then these here, a lot of people call these a candy block. So it comes like that. And once again, you can see there I've shaped that one up on the linisher to do a specific job. And then I've chopped one down to make myself some little blocks, get into those tight areas. And then when you're colour sanding, primarily that's like a really original colour sanding block that I love. And then I've chopped one up to make small pieces to get into all those little bits and pieces, engine bays and in around the drip gutters and that sort of stuff that you can't get to. And then reverse curves, you can see that one's got Velcro on it, so I'm using the Mercer on that, and then that's without. So reverse curves, and then bits of pipe. These bits of pipe, they're obviously just a bit of hose, bit of vacuum hose, but I keep that in with all my rubbing gear so it's nice and clean. It doesn't have any sort of oils and stuff that are going to get into the work. And that one there, I know I've had in there for probably 35 years, bit of radiator hose, and that's a classic. So that's a XA Falcon armrest, front armrest that I've cut the ends off because the radius on there is almost identical to the wheel arches on a Falcon. So that's been kicking around forever. Bunnings, I think by memory, or it might have been super cheap, really cost effective, but has that nice radius, clamps down and holds the paper on. Good for engine bays, wheel arches, that sort of thing. And then the same as these. These are, I think, for doing skirting boards and stuff. Once again, the old paint shop at Bunnings, but very flexible, so they're great for doing wheel tubs. And because they're cheap, you can cut them down, make them into the shape that you need. So yeah, it's really about finding something that suits the job at hand, and I'll show you how I do that as I'm doing the body work. And even blocks of wood, nice radiused edges on those. It's just whatever fits in your hand on the job. The old Tassie oak makes a statement again. So that's the sort of stuff I use, along with the Mercer gear now that makes so much difference with keeping the dust down by using the vacuum. So this one's my bog trolley. So I've been using the 3M Platinum Plus, and I like that. It's limited pinholes, goes in nice, rubs nice. I've always used this type of board to mix on. Once again, everyone has their own loves and hates. Some people use a flat piece of glass. You can buy a pad that's got loose leaves that come off. And then when you read the data on these, I don't know if it's written on the tin here, it'll actually tell you what the mixing code should be. And it's normally 2 or 3% of weight by filler to the actual hardener. Now, for many years now, I've been using a set of scales whereby I stick my board on there, zero the scales, put my bog on, zero again, go to my little sheet that I've got here, which is a 2% one, utilise that depending on how many grams of bog I've got to how many grams of hardener I use. It doesn't take long, and what it does do is it gives you a very consistent ratio of hardener to the filler. And what that does is when you apply that onto the job, the rubbing consistency stays the same, so one's not harder than the other. And the second thing is as it dries, it doesn't dry quicker or slower, and it gives you a far more consistent finish to your filler. And especially if you're doing work in a short period of time, it makes a difference to the way it hardens, and you will get a far better result if it's consistent. The other thing is if you have a problem with your filler and you actually get it analysed, or the company that you might be having problems with, if they have it analysed and it comes in at too high or too low, once again it's not warranted. So I think it's worth the effort, and I've found it to be that way. So one of the secrets to being able to do this sort of work in a workshop that always looks nice and clean is to have a dust-free sanding system, whereby this one here is a Mercer brand. So pretty much a vacuum cleaner that's set up, and obviously you can use it on a machine, you know, a 6-inch whizzer, orbital, whatever you want to call it. And it's got an automatic setting, but it also has a manual where we run this hose, and that hose then attaches to a range of blocks that I have, and they go from the little fella, so that one, to a wider, shorter one, and then this one, and then there's some concave and convex attachments that go on there as well, this sort of thing. And then little ones, and then some other bits and pieces that I've chopped up and made to work with it as well. And then the one that I use the most, or the two that I use the most, is the big suckers. So this one here is adjustable, so you can adjust that to the shape of the panel, like the roof panel. And then there's a normal flat one as well, be kicking around here somewhere. So in the engine bay here, I'll primarily be probably using this little fella here, and then I'll show you as I do a bit of that. So I'm just waiting for that to go off. So while it's got that little tackiness to it, it's still too soft. So then the papers I'm using, are Velcro, so they're all stuck together. So I mainly use 80 grit. So the 80 in this Abranet is pretty similar to like using, you know, 40 or 36 grit in normal paper, and I find it very good. Just got to watch you don't run up and down the lines, end up getting lines in your filler. Okay, so I've got that in there. Now, when you feel it, it'll be like tacky, and as soon as that tackiness goes away, which is pretty much about now, you need to start cutting it, and then you've really got 20 minutes to get the top cut off it. Otherwise it starts to go too hard and then the block will ride over it. So I'm going to rip the top off that now and get some shape in it. I'm just trying to take the top off those couple of lows there so it doesn't leave that green top on it. So I'm going to put another coat on it.
Hey guys, so we're going to get a start on the dash. Darren and Howard have already started cutting into this one. This was just going to be the test fit, but they've already cut it all out. It all fits well. There's nothing really wrong with this dash at all. So I'm going to take all this skin off. Reason for that is if you trim straight over the top of this vinyl, pretty sure it will lift because the vinyl's porous. You can spray it and seal it. I've done them like that before, which does work, but I think the best way to do it is to take this off. The foam underneath is a very high dense foam, and I can glue straight to that, and I know that if I glue to that, it's not going to lift. So got to do some mods here as well because we don't need these vents. That little section here, where'd it go? Don't know. But that's just been roughed in there, so I can neaten all that up because it usually sits about there. So that's been brought back. Yeah, so I'll start taking it apart now. Get this. This is the airbag panel. So we don't really need the airbag in there either. Now I'll get this apart. Same thing, de-skin it, and see what I'm working with. It comes off pretty easy, but the biggest risk is that, especially on the edges, if you peel it, it can rip the foam. If it rips the foam, then you're kind of buggered, but you can spend a lot of time trying to fix it. If it does get pretty caught up, I usually just heat it, give it a bit of heat, and that softens the vinyl up, then it can peel off pretty easy. This section here lines up with the A pillar anyway, so I'll be custom making all that to make it fit. Even this comes off pretty easy, so if you did, you know, put primer on it or something to seal it and then trim to this, you could see that it could potentially make it lift even from here. So, well, I'm pretty happy with how it's coming off, actually. Alright, I'll keep going with it. Alright, got all the vinyl off and really happy with how it came off. Yeah, sometimes the vinyl can like rip the foam or tear the foam off or something, but it actually came out really well, even on all the sharp edges where it would usually tear, like around these parts and everything. It all came off really good. Gave it a little bit of heat to help it and then just release it and cut it here and there, but it came off really good. Next is getting this mounted. This is just the spare one. We've got another one that's in like really good condition. This one's got a few broken bits and whatever, so that'll get replaced. But I can just at least make up for it. So this is where it goes, sits in there. Usually it sits back here somewhere, probably, yeah, that far. So it's been moved up. Howard and Darren have just cut out a rough area here where it's got to go. So now that I know where it sits, I'll make up a bit of a template that'll go over the top of here to have a nice hard edge, which will then follow this, and the leather can tuck in just down below it. Just sit like that. So let's trace this up. I'm just making a thin ridge along here, just space out there and there. So that's it there, and then that will end up just sitting just inside there like that. Okay, so I've just cut out the section of foam there where this will sit in. I cut this out of a bit of 9mm, so it's actually the same height as the foam. And then just there, I've just got some threads, put some bolts in there. I haven't cut those heads off yet, but I've just wound those in. And then I've got some holes there, which the threads will just push through. So I can push those through, and then I can get a nut on underneath, just under there. And pull that in nice and tight. And once that's pulled in tight, then that'll sit pretty flush then. And I'll, yeah, I can even just sand it a little bit, make it all nice and smooth. That's it. Okay, I'll just show you what I've done here to get rid of these side vents. So usually you got a little vent there, which is just a part of the demister, I guess. It just goes on the front windscreen, but the way it's set up in this car, they're pretty much useless anyway. So yeah, this is from the other side over there, just this little snap-in vent. All I've done, I've just put a bit of timber in here, which I've screwed to the plastic, and then glued it all from behind, so it's fairly solid now. It can't go anywhere. And then I've used just some fiberglass filler, snapped it in place, and put some more on the top there. This foam is very hard, so the fiberglass filler, it bonds to it really, really well. It's very thin on the edges there where the joint is, just so you know you don't want it to crack along there, but it's actually pretty strong. Like you can push on that and it won't crack or anything, and it's solid as. And with the fiberglass filler from underneath, I did all around the edges and then snap it in, and then put it on top as well at the same time, so it's all bonded underneath. So Yeah, so I'll do a little video on the other side as well, see how it's done. Okay, so I've sanded all this back, got all that ready, and prep soled it and everything. And same with this area here where it's going to go in. I only got a little bit of filler here for it. This stuff, yeah, bonds really well to the foam because the foam's really high dense as well. There's a bit of a gap around it as well, so when that goes in, you can see it'll squash around the sides. So I'll put a little bit of that on now. Try and keep it pretty thin there, and I'll use the standard filler over the top. Sweet, starting to go off already, which is good. So I'll let that dry, and then I can sand it. And then the other side as well, I'll just clean that up, and I'll put a bit of just regular filler straight over the top, smooth it out. That's it.
Don't forget, the comments are in the link below. Comments are in the link below.